I'm joined now by Perry Cammack. He's a fellow with the Middle East program at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. So, Perry, posing the question that our correspondent just asked, could we see Israel and Iran go to war? We know that tensions have been brewing. Was Trump pulling out of the Iran nuclear deal the tipping point?
Could we go to war? I think the answer is yes. I don't necessarily think that's likely or the likeliest scenario, but clearly it's a dangerous situation. I guess the real question is, after last night, after the Israeli airstrikes against Syrian and Iranian targets, is how does Iran now respond? Has Israel established deterrence? In other words, have they signaled a strong enough willingness to take action that Iran backs down a bit? Or does Iran now feel the need, or Hezbollah, frankly, to respond in kind? And to this point, I don't think we know the answer to that question, Elaine.
Well, and to that point, could this push Iran back to developing a nuclear weapon?
Well, I think at this point, it does seem that Iran is kind of undertaking a two-phased approach. In other words, acting very hawkishly in the region, in Syria, perhaps in Yemen, Lebanon, elsewhere. But it is also signaled to this point that I think it maybe sees some diplomatic advantage in signaling, in particular to Europe, that it intends to remain in the agreement. Of course, the risk is, if things start to unravel in Syria, that Iran's strategic calculations might change, in which case one could at least contemplate a kind of nuclear crisis, but I don't think we're there yet. I think this is likely to unfold over days and weeks, not hours.
I want to ask you about Syria again in just a moment, but we know that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was just in Russia meeting with President Putin. What is Moscow's part in all of this, and what did or didn't happen for these latest events to unfold in Syria?
Well, this, in my mind, is the most interesting aspect of it. Of course, it's not, I think, an accident that the attack came just days after Trump pulled out of the agreement. And then, as you said, it was just hours after Netanyahu met with Putin. Then after the attack, you had basically the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, and a few others essentially signaling support for the attack. So I think from an Israeli perspective, they have to be pretty happy that they've signaled to Iran that they actually seem to have some support here. And interestingly, the response from Moscow was pretty muted, which may suggest that Moscow may not be completely sad to see Iranian influence in Syria curved back a little bit.
And that being said, how does this exchange change the dynamics of the existing civil war in Syria?
Well, in some ways, I think it doesn't. In Syria, I think we have layers on conflict. There's the civil war itself, in which the Syrian regime led by President Assad clearly has the upper hand. I think yesterday's airstrikes doesn't change that at all. On the other hand, there's the international aspects of it, these tripwires which could lead to a broader regional conflagration. And here's where the danger is, obviously, that Hezbollah responds or Iran responds, and eventually that conflict with Israel even spreads into Lebanon as well.
And just a couple seconds here, Perry, what will it take to bring the temperature down? We've seen escalation after escalation. How do you see this playing out?
Well, I think the key player, at least insofar as this the strikes yesterday, or the exchange between Israel, Iran, Hezbollah, the key player is Russia. I mean, they're the ones that have active channels with all the parties, including Hezbollah. They're the party that essentially brokered these deconfliction zones, which are precisely in the space where this conflict occurred, or the exchange occurred. So I think to some extent, Moscow will have a pretty important role, at least over the next hours and days, but we shall see.
All right, Perry Cammack, we appreciate your insight. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.